Welcome to the Taped Podcast, the most nostalgic podcast in the world. We are your hosts, myself, Michael.
And me, Miho.
And for today's edition of the Taped Podcast, we are going to be going over the same formula that we do for pretty much every week. 3 new albums and 1 classic. For today, the 3 new albums that we have are Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa.
Woo!
Yves Tumor with Heaven to a Tortured Mind.
Woo!
The New Abnormal by The Strokes.
Woo!
And for our classic, we are celebrating 5 years of To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar.
Boo boo.
Boo boo! Well,
which album do you want to start off with?
Let's do Future Nostalgia. Let's get that over and done with. You have a synopsis?
Hell yeah, I do. Dua Lipa is a singer-songwriter from London, England. Future Nostalgia is her second studio album and the follow-up to her successful self-titled debut album from 2017.
Alright, sick. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Track 1, the title track, Future Nostalgia.
Hell yeah.
Right, so the instrumental on this thing is really good. I really like the instrumental. I think that it has kind of like a Daft Punk kind of flair to it, like old school kind of feel. It's got a nice like dance pop, synth pop instrumental, and it sounds great. I absolutely love this instrumental. And, you know, Dua Lipa gave a pretty decent performance. She was basically on about female empowerment and all that sort of stuff, and I really appreciate like the confidence in her vocals. But at the same time, I thought her vocals were pretty generic, not at all that interesting, but you know, she gave a decent enough performance, and yeah, this is probably one of my favorite tracks in the album.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of my favorites as well. The instrumental obviously takes heavily from the 80s, but the song also has a lot of features that are distinctively, 90s and 2000s, especially in terms of Dua Lipa's vocal performance. I think that really takes heavily from the 2000s era of pop. And yeah, this is just a great, fun track. The bass mixing is really good. It stands out as one of my favorite aspects of the track. Dua Lipa gives off a very confident, very energetic and fun performance, and I think it's a great performance from her. And as a whole, I think this is just a very well written, catchy pop song. It's brilliant. I think.
Understandable. I gave this track 7.
I gave it a 10. It's one of my favorites on the album.
Woo! Nice. First 10 of the day, boys.
First 10 of the day.
Alright, next track is Don't Start Now. I think this track is very good as well. I like the slick bass line. It's got really cool, like, new disco and funky vibes. It actually sounds really cool. And personally, I didn't really enjoy Dua Lipa's vocal performance all that much, but I enjoyed this for the production. And, it's a pretty good track overall.
This is my favorite song on the album for sure. And it's honestly just one of the best pop songs or radio hits in general that I've heard in a long time. The production is incredible. The bass on this thing is nuts. The synth work is not to be overlooked. It's fucking brilliant. I think that Dua Lipa writes this already brilliant instrumental with very energetic and fun vocals that suit the instrumental perfectly. And I think the track is just fine-tuned to perfection in every sense. It has an incredibly catchy chorus. Pre-chorus is perfect as well. The verses are fun. The verses are great. Instrumental is quite impressive for a pop song. And, the bridge with the, violin samples and the glitchy vocal samples is like the cherry on top for me. Definitely has that new disco flair this track does, as you said. And it was one of my top 10 songs of 2019, and on this album, it's still amazing in my opinion.
Alright, I gave this track 7.
I gave it a 10.
Another 10, let's go.
It won't be quite this high as the album goes on, but really love the start.
So did I. Alright, next.
Cool.
Next track is Cool. It's got a really cool synth pop instrumental, again bringing that nostalgic kind of 80s feel to it. It sounds pretty decent, and I don't know, I didn't really enjoy Dua Lipa's contributions to the track all that much. I just thought vocally and lyrically she was just kind of generic, not all that interesting, nothing really noteworthy to basically ingrain to memory. I just personally enjoyed this one for the instrumental. I just didn't really like Dua Lipa's performance at all.
Yeah, I think the instrumental is once again fantastic on this. Synth work feels very icy, very cool, as the title might suggest, and it contributes like very heavily to the nostalgic feeling of this song. I think Dua Lipa once again contributes great vocals to the track. I don't think she's the most technically incredible vocalist. She's not, your Ariana Grande, but I think she perfectly matches the tracks in either in a tonal sense or in energy, and she has just the right amount of intensity, confidence, and oomph to her vocals that match the tracks perfectly. And it just feels like these are tracks that she's involved in the process of making them, and it's not like she's just getting lyrics and an instrumental off a producer and all she has to do is rap. It feels like she's actually involved in this. And I definitely appreciate that, because there's not a lot of that. I would say, when it comes to modern day pop, even some artists that I do quite enjoy don't tend to really be that heavily involved with their own music. So I definitely appreciate this. And yeah, the chorus also on this is among the catchiest on the album, in my opinion.
I gave this track a 6.
I gave it a 9.
Next track is Physical. This track, I think it's alright. Like, it's got really decent production. The dance pop instrumental is pretty decent, I suppose. Not my favourite on the album, but it's alright. I don't know, Dua Lipa just loses me on this one. I just thought, again, she was just kind of bland. She was just kind of uninteresting. Like, she's not bad by any means, but she's just, okay. Like, nothing stand out. Like, the song, to me, kind of sounds like the kind of shit that you'd catch your nan listening to on their way to fucking bingo while the radio is on. And that's not an insult, I just found that kind of funny.
It's
not a diss, I swear. But I think it's okay,
Honestly, when this first came out and I heard it come out as a single, I didn't care much for it. I thought it was a step down after Future Nostalgia and Don't Start Now. But while I do not think it's as good as those tracks, it has definitely grown on me. The instrumentation really makes this track for me, as you said. The spacey kind of driving synth line suits the kind of immediacy of the verse, and the whole track just meshes together very well in that sense. And when the chorus kicks in, it pumps kind of adrenaline into this track, and I think as a whole it is a very, very enjoyable track, very energetic track, and very well produced track. But I just don't think, especially on the songwriting front, it's as strong as some of the other tracks on this album.
I gave it a 5.
I gave it an 8.
Levitating. This track is kind of a step up from Physical, in my opinion. I think that the vocals are decent enough, I suppose. They're better than what Dua offered in the previous track, in my opinion. The slick bass line is absolutely fantastic. I love the funky dance beat. It gives me kind of Daft Punk Random Access Memory vibes. I love that feel, and I'm looking at the CD right now, and it's really good. I really enjoyed this song, and bass equals good.
Yeah, this track is just pure unfiltered fun. Dua Lipa gives off an awesome performance.
Awful performance. Oh god. Oh.
I think while the instrumentals definitely are the highlight to a lot of these tracks, I think Dua Lipa really holds them together and, does her job very well. when it comes to being the glue kind of behind these songs. And this is definitely one of her most memorable performances on the album. Instrumental, as I said, is once again very great, very lush and organic, and it has plenty of layers. It has funky guitars. Bass, once again, is fantastic. The synths sound very grandiose, very, in your face, high up in the mix. And it also, I love the use of sampling. It's very faint here, but it really just adds that kind of variety to the instrumental. And yeah, I think the bridge is also fantastic, and her delivery on it is definitely something you would have heard in the 90s, and I definitely appreciate that. And yeah, it's another highlight for me.
Alright, I gave this track an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Next track is Pretty Please. I think this is the worst track on the album. I think that the beat is genuinely awful. I don't like the instrumental at all. But the bass line is cool, and the kicks are pretty decent, alright? But it's so minimal and so skeletal to the point that I don't care for it. It picks up in the second half, but I just, you lost me literally fucking a minute into the track. And Dua Lipa, again, is just not that interesting. She didn't really hold her own on this one. I know I'm being quite blunt here, but I just really don't like the song.
I like it. I think the instrumental is definitely a lot more low-key, especially in comparison to some of the other instrumentals on this album. But I think the bass is still great, and it's still holding this instrumental together. And I think Dua Lipa gives off one of her better performances, and I think the minimalistic kind of instrumental really lets her shine. Her performance is very bright, very passionate, and it really does make the track for me. Overall, I don't think it's one of the best, but I still think it's a fantastic song.
I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 9.
There's so much contrast in here, I love it.
People on both ends of the spectrum can relate.
Can relate.
That's good. Who can relate?
Oh god. Next track is Hallucinate. What's this now? Another cool funky dance beat. That actually sounds really good. It's got kind of a house kind of drum pattern, and it sounds pretty decent. Again, Dua Lipa lost me. Again, not much to say there.
For me, Dua Lipa carries this track. I think her vocals are brilliant, and they're full of power, full of intensity, especially when they need to be, and they just mesh really well with the instrumental. Production is brilliant as well. The instrumental makes really good use of synths in how they almost play completely side by side with the drums, and they almost act as part of the beat. It's just a great song. It wouldn't be one of my best, but I think it's still another pop, very well done pop song.
I gave this track 6.
I gave it an 8.
Next track is Love Again. It's got this really grand orchestral opening into another cool funky dance beat. Well, it actually sounds great in my opinion. Dua Lipa, no.
This is that your synopsis?
Yes.
This is my second favorite track. The instrumental is amazing. It feels very new disco, but also very synth pop, but also very modern contemporary pop. And I think it's as perfect a fusion you could have of those three. Dua Lipa gives one of her better and more memorable performances, and the looped sample of White Town by Your Woman that plays throughout this track is a perfect fit. It definitely adds to the nostalgia of the track. Could be because I am familiar with the original track and have been for a while, but I just think that sample is perfect. And yeah, this is a brilliant song, and I would probably say it's my song of the year so far.
I gave it 6.
I gave it a 10.
Oh boy. Ooh, the contrast, I love it.
I mean, it could be worse. You could be giving them 1s, and I could be giving them all 10s.
I could be blasting this album, but
A day that will come. I hope, at least.
I hope a day like this will come where one of us is probably something like this happened already, but one of us is like really positive about it, but then then the other half just completely blasts the album for everything that it is.
Hell yeah.
Alright, Break My Heart. It's another funky dance beat. And it sounds great, in all honesty. It's atmospheric by the pre-chorus and actually sounds really nice, and I really enjoy it. But again, Dua Lipa, Slip.
For me, the bass, again, fantastic. I think the track has a lot of progression from the verse to the very anthemic pre-chorus to the very groovy, funky, chorus, and every second that the track progresses is brilliant. Easily another highlight for me. And yeah, Dua again kills it for me with a very suave, very confident performance. Brilliant track in my opinion.
Gave it a 4.
I gave it a 9.
Alright, next track, Good in Bed. Another track that I don't like at all. I hate the beat. I think it's like it's like an insert 2012 Macklemore beat or some shit like that. I don't know why I got that vibe, but I just got the fucking Macklemore and Ryan Lewis vibe from it for some reason. And I fucking hate the chorus. I think that the chorus was so fucking annoying. I didn't like the chorus at all. I just thought it was mind-numbingly bad. And I don't like this track at all. That's it.
In my opinion, it's an underrated track. I think the whole aesthetic of it really reminds me of a Lily Allen track back when she was making music. It really brought back a weird type of nostalgia for the early 2010s in a way. But I think the instrumental is brilliant. The kind of lo-fi piano samples that it's composed off sound very unique, but also sound very bright and bubbly. The chorus, while admittedly not, lyrically profound, it's not a fucking Edgar Allan Poe poem. It's still catchy. I still enjoy it. And I think it's just a fun song. I don't take it too seriously. I love the production. I think it's catchy, and yeah, I really, really enjoy it.
I gave it a 4.
I gave it a 9.
Okay, last track, Boys Will Be Boys. I can appreciate the themes on this track of, female empowerment and all that sort of stuff. But like when she used the word mansplain, I kind of cringed. Not gonna lie, it was like some fucking BuzzFeed type anthem or some shit. But other than that, the beat was pretty boring, and again, vocals didn't really do much for me.
Instrumentally, I think it's one of the more unique songs in the album. Doesn't really sound like any other track, for better or for worse, mostly for better. The instrumental is very largely string oriented, and the track is, for me, largely carried by Dua Lipa's vocal performance, which is very anthemic, very powerful. Lyrically, hit or miss definitely, but I do appreciate the message. Chorus is very catchy, very anthemic, and the whole track just feels like a very suitable way to close off the album. And yeah, I do really like this track.
I gave this track a 5.
I gave it an 8.
Final thoughts and opinions of Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa. I suppose we'll get the negative one out of the way. Personally, I think that the production, a lot of it is pretty cool, but there were some parts of the production that I didn't really like the one I said, insert Macklemore type beat. But I think, it's produced well, and the album does feel like something that, that Dua Lipa wanted to make and felt very involved in, and I can respect that. But personally, for me, I don't really enjoy Dua Lipa as a vocalist. Personally, I think that she's pretty uninteresting, pretty bland, pretty generic, I would say, and the way that I see it is that if you swapped Dua Lipa with insert any other mainstream pop artist, then the album would sound exactly the same to me. And I feel like it's being a bit marketed as groundbreaking because it's bringing back old tropes. And that's not really groundbreaking at all, in my opinion. Oh, look, you're reusing the same funky dance beat that someone else used. Okay, then. Not, no, don't take that out of context. Personally, no, just to summarize it, I think that Future Nostalgia is the most overrated album of 2020 that I've heard so far.
I disagree. I think this is a brilliant album. Before going into this album, I definitely didn't think I would like it that much. Wasn't too keen on her debut album, and for me to praise it this highly and thinks like this highly of it is quite a testament to how strongly I feel about this album. I think from the moment Future Nostalgia opens up, with the groovy title track, to the final very anthemic closer, Boys Will Be Boys, I think it's all just pop gold. I think this album is a masterclass in how to make a pop album that is both musically fulfilling and well produced and crafted, but also without letting go of any mainstream appeal. Every track here for me is just tuned to perfection. It rarely slows down on the songwriting, on the production front, and while it does follow the recent mainstream trend of taking inspiration from the past, I don't think it overdoes
Which The Weeknd did better, by the way.
I disagree.
I
don't
agree.
think it overdoes the past. And I think it's very fun. It's very fresh, incredibly produced. And when it comes to contemporary pop, there isn't much out there that's better than this, in my opinion. And I'm always happy when an artist surprises me and proves me wrong. And I'm happy here, and I'm delighted that this album is as enjoyable to me as it is, and I'm gonna keep on listening to it.
All right, all respect to you.
Final score?
I gave this album a 5.
I gave it a light 9.
Moving on to our next album, I think we should do The New Abnormal by The Strokes.
Hell yeah.
Go ahead.
I think everybody knows The Strokes, but The Strokes are an American garage rock band from Manhattan, New York, formed in 1998, fronted by indie rock icon Julian Casablancas. The New Abnormal is their 6th studio album, and it's their first in 7 years.
Alright. Track 1, The Adults Are Talking. And I love the instrumentation on this track in particular. I think it's got a really sick guitar groove. The drums sound a bit compressed, but I think they're pretty decent nonetheless, and the bass is pretty solid too. Julian's vocals are absolutely solid. They seem very low key, but it's kind of done in a way where it seems like people are talking back and forth. I mean, and as it says in the title, the adults are talking, so it kind of makes sense, And I can really appreciate the kind of detail that went into that, and I really enjoyed this track. It was a very solid opening, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic way to open the album. Right off the bat, it's quite atmospheric, but it's also energetic just from the get-go. The driving synths and bass line, over the constant, very kind of synthetic drum beat, I think really set a precedent for this track and for the album. The chorus is brilliant. It's very catchy. Vocals from Casablancas are brilliant, well produced, and he's on top of his game on this album. I really think so. Guitars, as per usual, are fantastic. Very atmospheric, very in your face, high up in the mix, but also very, very pleasant. Especially in the post-chorus, the guitars are brilliant, and yeah, this is a really, really strong way to open the album up.
I gave this track an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Next track is Selfless. I love the dreaminess of the synths in this track in particular. They sound amazing. I love The guitars sound amazing on this too. They have kind of like a fuzzy nature to it. And they sound fucking brilliant in my opinion. And, you know, the drums are pretty sick. They slap, in my opinion. and the vocals are really good from Julian Casablancas. They are powerful as hell. I absolutely love the vocal performance on this. It is very fucking solid, and it made for one of my favourite tracks on the album.
The instrumental, I really like the instrumental. It's very light, very breezy. The bass and drums are very calm and subdued and almost minimal. Julian Casablancas gives a similarly subdued but also very passionate performance. The mixing is perfect throughout this track, especially on his vocals. And the very synthy guitar solos are also great, in my opinion. It wouldn't be one of my favourite tracks, but I still think it's pretty good.
Great. I gave it a 9.
I give it a 7.
Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus. I think this track is very good as well. I really enjoy the instrumental. I think that the guitars sound great. The synths are pretty cool too. They're very solid. Vocal performance again is pretty good, and it's not my favourite on the album, but I think it's pretty decent.
This is another highlight for me when it comes to the album. It's very anthemic and funky. The kind of driving synth melody adds to that. It also adds a bit of a fun flair to the track. The chorus is definitely more typical of the Strokes, but it's still brilliant. Julian's vocals, as they are in almost every track, are brilliant. Instrumentation throughout is also fantastic. The synths, really well incorporated into the typical Strokes sound, and as a whole, I think this is one of the best tracks on the album for me, for sure.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Next track is Bad Decisions. I think this track is fantastic. The guitars sound great. The drums slap as they should. Think again, vocal performances are really good. It has this kind of like nostalgic feel to it in a way. Like the way that Julian Casablancas sings the chorus is kind of reminiscent of something that I heard before. Like, the song fucking what was it? I can't remember, but it has that same kind of flow to it, you could say. And I absolutely love that feel to it. It makes this track stand out a lot more. And it's catchy as hell. I fucking love it to death. I think it is one of the best tracks in the album, in my opinion.
I think there is something about what you said. I think there's definitely a track that this sounds like, because I also definitely find especially the guitar tone and the vocal performance on the chorus to be very, nostalgic and sentimental. I think Julian's vocals are once again very passionate, very memorable. I think they really suit the instrumental. The track instrumentally is quite busy throughout, and there's enough to it to definitely reward multiple listens, definitely reward paying closer attention to the track. And I think this is, to me, this has happened a few times this year with tracks that came out as singles, and I didn't tend to enjoy them quite as much as I do after I gave them more time and after I hear them in the context of the album. But I do really like this one, and it is my favorite track on the album.
Bro, I fucking remember the song now. The song now. You know that song that goes, I'm dancing with myself, I'm dancing with myself.
I do.
That song. That's I fucking love it.
No, for sure. Is that sampled?
I hope, if it is, then it's pretty good use of a sample. But my god.
That is very similar. I'm looking this up on Genius.
Check it. Well, while we're on the topic of this, I gave this track a 9.
I give it a 9 as well. Yep, yes. The song, yes. Dude, there definitely was something nostalgic about this. Yeah, Billy Idol, Dancing with Myself.
Brain moment.
I didn't catch the similarity, but I was like, this sounds just so nostalgic to me.
I fucking love that song. I like Billy Idol. Alright, next track is Eternal Summer. And this is my favorite track on the album. I love the groove of this track. The atmosphere is absolutely fantastic. The guitars are absolutely sick. And at the beginning, I love the kind of high-pitched vocals, but then it turns into fierce, like powerful, like kind of shouty in a way vocals. And they sound amazing. I absolutely love the way that this whole track sounds as a whole. And, it's my favorite on the album.
It's another brilliant track for me. It's very soft, very groovy instrumentally. Julian's vocals really match the very kind of breezy, summery aesthetics of the track, as well as the break guitars. They also do that. The drum and bass definitely emphasize the more relaxed, subdued tone of the track. And Julian's vocals, once again, are mixed brilliantly. And then the more shouty sections of the song, definitely... I had a weird connection to Roger Waters on the Wall a bit during those sections. It definitely sounded like that to me, and the guitars also sounded at some points like they could be straight out of what's it called, the Wall. So
is that a weird coincidence? Is it a weird coincidence that I was? No, this is different. Is it a weird coincidence that when I was listening to this song, my copy of The Wall came?
Possibly, yes, possibly.
That's such a weird fucking.
Maybe it's a sign. How is the copy? Is it the one that's in like cardboard sleeves?
Yeah.
You'd want to get inner sleeves for that at some point.
I will eventually.
I have them in my cardboard sleeves, and one of the first track kind of skips twice now because there's a scratch on it.
I'll invest in it then.
Just be careful with it. As long as you're careful with it, it's fine.
Eternal Summer, which is also. Okay, can we get on with this?
Yeah.
Alright, Eternal Summer. It's a 9 for me. This is going to be my fucking jam of the summer.
Damn, it's an 8 for me. A strong 8 though.
Very good indeed. At the Door. It's got like these kind of fuzzy kind of synths going on, and as it goes on, it gets more and more atmospheric, and I think it sounds amazing. And I think again, Julian Casablancas' vocals sound fucking brilliant, and they match the instrumental very well. It made for another great standout for me and another great track on this album.
In my opinion, this is probably my least favorite track on the album. I think the first half just doesn't sound all that interesting to me. The synth line for me gets quite repetitive, and Julian's vocals are really the only thing that first section of the song has going for it. The track definitely gets a lot more lush, a lot more interesting in the second half, especially in terms of the synths, but to me it's just not the most memorable track, and definitely not, first single worthy, in my opinion.
I gave this track a 9.
I gave it a 6.
That makes me upset. Alright, next track is Why Are Some Days So Depressing? I guess we'll never know.
I guess
eventually. I think that the guitars on this track, again, are extremely solid. All of the guitar work on this album so far has been fantastic. The drums, again, they slap. I love the groove of the instrumental. It sounds great. There's use of vocal effects here and there on Julian's vocals, but I don't mind them all that much. I think they're pretty good, and I think overall it's a decent enough vocal performance from Julian. Overall, another decent track in my opinion.
Yeah. As a whole, this instrumental is very upbeat and fun, and just, I love the very spacey kind of buzzing synths. They're very memorable, sound great in my opinion in the mix. Guitar work on this song is amazing, especially, during the solo on the bridge. I think that's definitely the highlight of the track for me. And it's just, for me, overall, another brilliant track.
I gave this track an 8.
I also gave it an 8.
Not the same anymore. Again, the guitars sound absolutely fantastic. The drums are great, and it has this kind of like weird hypnotic melody in the back of the instrumental, and that honestly is just luring me into this track, which is kind of ironic. The vocals again sound fantastic. They sound great. I love them to death. Another amazing track in my opinion.
It's very anthemic, very emotional track. Overall, I think it's one of the most, typical stroke sounding tracks in a way on the album, and it's absolutely brilliant. I think that the instrumental is very powerful, as are Casablanca's vocals. It's full of emotion, it's a very raw track, and it just sounds brilliant to me.
I gave this track a 9.
I gave it an 8.
Sick. Final track, Ode to the Mets. It's got like this, it's a very like synthy kind of a bop in a way. Into this kind of like beautiful, like atmospheric type like sound, and the guitars sound amazing, obviously. The fuzz. The vocals again are fantastic, and overall just an amazing way to end the album. I'm happy with the way it ended.
Yeah, it's a very down-tempo atmospheric track to close the album off, and it's a brilliant one at that. I think the instrumentation is very lush and calm, and it's one of the most memorable performances for me from Casablancas. The mixing throughout this track is fantastic. The guitars sound really good. As you said, the fuzz. Just the fuzz.
The fuzz!
Yeah, it's a great way to end the album off.
I gave this track a 9.
I gave it an 8.
Overall thoughts and opinions on The New Abnormal by The Strokes. Before this, like literally the day I listened to this, I only listened to one Strokes album prior to it. And that was literally like an hour before I listened to this one. And I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. But in all honesty, I absolutely love this album. I think it is amazing. I love the whole feel of it. For Rick Rubin production, I'm actually surprised at how great it is. Right? And I didn't expect to like anything coming from Rick Rubin as of late, but holy shit, it actually sounds great in my opinion. I think that Julian Casablancas' vocals sound fantastic. He's had some outstanding vocal performances on this album. I think that he matched the instrumentation very well, and again, the fuzz. It's great in my opinion. Like, I can't wait to delve into the rest of the Strokes discography, and as of right now, The New Abnormal is probably like top 3 of my favorite albums that have come out this year so far.
Sweet.
And this album is proof that rock isn't dead, unlike Green.
I think that this is the Strokes' best album since their debut, in my opinion. I'm just really surprised at how much I enjoyed this. Definitely reminds me in a way of the experience I had listening to Is This It for the first time. I think it sounds just as passionate.
This is amazing.
Just as bold. Yeah, great. And somehow just as youthful as they've ever been, in a sound that is, as a whole, definitely updated for the 2020s. I think everything from the brilliant vocal performances to Julian Casablancas' great synths sound fantastic. The guys incorporated the synths really well into their music, and I think everything just clicks together like it just hasn't since their early days. And in my opinion, I know the band had it in them to make a great album. They've done it before, and I'm thrilled they've pulled through here. I'm loving this.
Same here. I gave this album an 8, a very strong 8.
I gave it a light to decent 8.
Alright. Next album on our list, the final album of the new releases, is Heaven to a Tortured Mind by Yves Tumor. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yves, I think, yeah.
Yves, okay. You have a synopsis?
Yeah, Yves Tumor is the stage name of American singer-songwriter, musician, and producer Sean Bowie. Heaven to a Tortured Mind is their 4th studio album.
Alright. Track 1, Gospel for a New Country. I think that this is a very great way to start off the album. I think that the drums absolutely slap. I think that horn sample sounds absolutely fantastic. It is worked well into the instrumental. It's got kind of an old school kind of vibe as well. And the guitars in the chorus sound absolutely fantastic. And Yves's vocals are pretty solid. They pulled it off extremely well. And yeah.
This track for me is led by a very groovy bass. It's definitely the highlight for me. The anthemic trumpets are also brilliant, and they're brilliantly incorporated into the bass line. Vocals from Sean sound fantastic. And the track has a very groovy, very experimental aesthetic to it. And as a whole, I'm absolutely digging it. It's my favorite track on the album right off the bat.
I agree. Yeah. I big agree.
I really like it.
I gave the opener a 9.
I gave it a 9.
Agreement!
Woohoo!
Alright, next track is Identity Burn. There's a lot going on in this instrumental.
it's Medicine Burn. The next track is Identity Trade.
Identity Trade. Fuck! I'm an idiot. I don't know. I think I was tired when I wrote down my notes. I was tired, yeah. No, Medicine Burn. I think that there's a lot going on in this instrumental. It sounds pretty cool. The drums slap. The guitars are very solid. And like I said, there's a lot going on. It may feel a bit messy, but I think that it's kind of a beautiful mess, you could say. And Yves' vocals are fantastic. They pulled it off extremely well. It matched the instrumental very well, and I think this is another pretty good track.
Yeah, this is a very busy track in my opinion, mostly for the better. The instrumental is very unique in how, these pulsating, buzzing synths almost shroud the track, and Sean gives one of their most memorable performances. The track shifts between these stripped back and chaotic sections, and both aspects of the track, both sections of the track really sound fantastic to me. And yeah, it's another great track. Not as good as the first, but still great.
Alright, I gave this track an 8.
I gave it an 8.
Identity Trade. Think, again, much like the previous tracks, the drums slap. They are pretty cool. The bass is actually really good on this one too. I really enjoy the bass playing on this track in particular. And again, Yves' vocals slap. They did a very good job with what they were given. And ultimately, I think it's a pretty decent track.
Yeah, it's a very groovy yet kind of unsettling instrumental with brilliant bass work and fantastic drumming. Sean gives a somewhat faint yet still entertaining and memorable performance. And, with the odd instrumental patterns and samples in the background, they really do mix well into the track and prove to be the backbone of this whole track. And yeah, another great track.
I gave this track an 8.
I gave it an 8.
Kerosene. This one has got more of a slow vibe to it. I think the atmosphere sounds great. It's kind of intoxicating in a way. The guitars, again, sound great, obviously. And the vocals are fantastic too. And the background vocalist was fantastic too. Thought they sounded amazing. And overall, it's another one of my favorite tracks.
Yeah, it's very groovy, very, but also very serene and calm. It's not as, groovy. It's not as groovy as the previous tracks, but it's still groovy. I don't know where I was going with that. It's very, very faint and reverb performance from Sean, and the brilliant female backing vocals blend in very well together. Yeah, and the vocals are really a standout aspect of the track for me. At first, at least. Then the track kind of develops new layers, the most memorable of which are the fantastic guitar solos, which really add to the atmosphere of the track. And as a whole, it's one of my favorites. It's probably like a top 3, top 2 track on the album. Top 3.
All right. I gave this track a 9.
I gave it a 9 as well.
Epic.
Epic, bro.
Alright, next track is Hazel and Lights. The drums and the atmosphere is pretty cool. I do enjoy that whole aspect of the track. Yves held their own on the track, but I thought this wasn't as fleshed out as the others, and it was a bit too short, for me at least.
Yeah, it's a very pretty reverb-drenched instrumental. The vocals from Sean are great. However, I do wish there was a bit more to this track, as it is quite short, and in its running time, it doesn't really explore very much. I think it's a bit of a filler.
I agree. I gave this track a 7.
I gave it a 6.
Romanticist. The instrumental on this one, I think, is great, but it doesn't really go anywhere, especially with how short the track is itself. It doesn't really have enough time to become more than what it already is, and it doesn't really have time to flesh out. And vocal performances, again, are pretty good, and they match the tone of the instrumental very well. But again, it's just, it's too short for my liking.
For me, the track is just far too busy instrumentally. The samples are a bit overdone, a bit overblown. It's to the point where I think it's hard to even identify a lot of the main features on the track in the first few listens. And Sean's vocals are often not able to shine through the mix because of all the stuff that's going on. And as a whole, I think this is probably my least favorite track on the album.
I'm with you there, brother.
I gave it a 5.
I gave it a 6. Dream Palette. And where the previous track was underwhelming, this one picked up the pace very well. It got that kind of buzz back again. The fuzzy guitars sound absolutely fantastic. The drums, again, they slap when they needed to. And again, Yves' vocals are fantastic.
Yeah, the start of the track definitely suffers from the same problems that the previous track did, but it quickly comes together and calms down, and when it does, it's pretty good. The sound is quite lush, quite pretty, and it's very instrumentally solid and tight throughout. It's got memorable vocals. I just wouldn't say it's one of the highlights for me as a whole.
I disagree. It's a highlight for me. I gave it a 9.
I gave it a 7.
Alright. Superstars. The atmosphere is fucking great. I absolutely love the kind of vibe it goes for. It gets me entranced into what's actually going on in the instrumental. I love the guitars. Again, they sound absolutely fantastic. And again, the vocals are pretty good as well, and Yves held their own.
It's a decent track. I think the instrumental was very memorable and very grand, but the performance from Sean as a whole wasn't just as memorable or as convincing as some of their other performances, and as a whole this track just kind of gets lost in the track listing for me.
I gave this track an 8.
I gave it a 6.
Foley Impose, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
I think.
I definitely butchered that.
It's a music podcast, it's not a vocabulary podcast.
Alright. I think that the kind of kicks and the kind of 808s, I would like to say, hit hard. The drums, again, they slap pretty hard as well. The guitars are very solid. I think the instrumental sounds fantastic. The vocal effects match the vibe of what the instrumental is trying to go for, in my opinion. And it works well. It kind of blends into something that sounds fantastic. And yeah, I really enjoy it.
To me, this is probably my second favorite track. The atmosphere for me is incredible. Very eerie, very nostalgic, and Sean's reverb vocals, I think they're mixed very well. They're very faint, but I think that's what makes this track for me. Instrumental is very dreamy and also quite intricate and layered, and as a whole it's just a brilliant song.
I gave this track an 8.
I gave it a 9.
Sick. Next is Strawberry Privilege. The vibe, again, is fantastic. I love the atmosphere and kind of psychedelic approach that it goes for. The bass is fantastic. The bass sounds amazing. Sean's vocals sound, again, great. It has kind of a whiny feel to it, but again, they sound fantastic. I gave it an 8.
I didn't get to talk about it.
Oh shit, sorry. Cut that out.
Alright. Yeah, 50, 51, 51. Okay. It's a really pleasant track, and the bass line drives this track, and the instrumental, for me, it really is the best aspect of it. The instrumental, the other aspects of the instrumental are really built around the bass line. Sean's vocals are faint and also quite pretty, but also in a way very uneasy. And as a whole, I think this track uses reverb very well. The female backing vocals are also great, and overall, it's a great track.
I gave this track an 8.
I gave it an 8 as well.
Asteroid Blues. Probably one of my least favorite tracks in the album. Bottom 3 at least. The drums slap. The eerie vibe is cool. There's no vocals on this track. It's an instrumental. But it's too short to be at all that memorable, in my opinion.
Yeah, the bass line is very grimy and heavy. The drums also very tight, very sharp. And the dark ambience of the instrumental really sets the mood for the rest of the track. And it may be an instrumental, but I really think it's a great one.
I gave it 7.
I gave it an 8. She's not here. Oh my fucking god. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I have to cut out like 5 parts.
You could just leave it in. Just... I don't know.
Okay, so
not just
3. Alright, next track.
Next track is Greater Love. Those guitars in the instrumental sound fantastic. The drums, again, they slap when they need to. They're very sharp. And again, Sean's vocals sound great. I think that is a cool way to end the album. And I think it is a pretty decent closer too.
Yeah, I think it's not the best track, but it is a decent way to close the album. It's got some really solid instrumentation, very pleasant flute and synth work, and the sampling throughout is also great. Sean's performance comes together great as well, and the overall track just isn't as memorable as some of the better tracks on the album, but it is still a highlight for me.
Alright, what the fuck did I drop? Dad, piss off. Sorry about that. I gave this track a 8.
I gave it a 7.
Sorry about that. My dad was just being a fucking retard. Alright, overall thoughts and opinions. I think that this album, it's pretty cool. I think that it's a really cool kind of psychedelic rock album. Is it correct to say that?
Psychedelic pop.
Pop? It's kind of like art rock, you could say, in a way.
Yeah.
I'll just stick with psychedelic pop instead. Seems more correct. And I think that the production, it sounds great. The drum work on this album stood out to me quite a lot, to be fair. I think that the drum work sounds fantastic. It's sharp. It needs to hit when it needs to. And, overall, it's great. I think that, again, Yves' vocals, sound great throughout the whole album. They try to match the psychedelic edge that each individual track is trying to go for, and, it's great. It matches the tones of the instrumentals. And overall, I think it's a pretty solid album, and I'd be interested to check out what else they have in their discography.
Yeah, I don't think it's the best album ever. I don't think it's one of the better albums from this year, but I still think it's a great album. It's probably my favorite Yves Tumor album. I think that it comes together in a lot of ways aesthetically, and they kind of on a lot of the songs refine and definitely polish the sound that they were going for in previous releases, like Safe in the Hands of Love, which is an album that I also enjoyed quite a lot. And the very atmospheric and dreamy aesthetic of Yves Tumor's music is definitely refined here, definitely improved upon here. but I still think there is some improvement to be had, especially with some tracks that, in my eyes, just weren't the best, either because they were overly busy in terms of production or a bit all over the place. However, for the most part, this is a very solid project, a very enjoyable project, one that I would definitely recommend. And some of my favorite tracks of the year are coming out of this project. So yeah, it's some very impressive material from them.
I'd agree as well. I gave this album overall an 8.
I give it a strong 7.
Alright. Now, before we move to the classic, what was your favourite release of the week, Michal?
Dua Lipa, Future Nostalgia.
Well, mine was The New Abnormal by The Strokes. And moving on to the classic.
Woohoo.
To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. I'm getting the fucking vinyl for this.
Kendrick
No, I
Lamar
already
is
have.
Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah. I mean, come on. He's probably he's the best rap lyricist past decade. Let's just say that. Easy pick. And fun fact...
I don't know, though. Hobson's pretty close.
Oh, piss off with Hobson. No, Joyner Lucas, what do you mean?
Did you not listen to Ill Mind of Hobson 5, where he spits the facts?
Did you not listen to the ADHD?
Here, let's talk
where he talk about the mental health.
Let's talk about the Kung Fu Kenny.
No Kung Fu Kenny!
Track 1, Wesley's Theory.
Featuring George Clinton and Thundercat.
Yeah.
It has like this cool, like old school jazz sample that opens into this really funky, like, type of instrumental, and it's got wobbly bass playing courtesy of Thundercat. Sounds amazing. And Thundercat had a contribution on the track as well in terms of vocals, and he was pretty decent at what he did. The beat is amazing. It was produced by Flying Lotus, Fly Low, and he killed it. And, you know,
Absolutely.
Kendrick killed it flow-wise and lyrical-wise. He's basically rapping from the perspective of a rapper who's just about to sign to a label and, like, leave the hood and shit. There's, like, a Dr. Dre voicemail in there as well. And overall, I think it's a very great way to open the track. It's one of the best album openers, period. It's one of my favorite anyway.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the best opening tracks for any album ever. It's got brilliant sampling throughout. Instrumental, very psychedelic, very, jazz-inspired, obviously, with incredible contributions from George Clinton and from Thundercat. Kendrick absolutely kills this track. The mixing on his vocals is brilliant, and the entirety of the track just has brilliant mixing. It's brilliantly put together by Philo, and it's just quite a lot of unorthodox ideas explored throughout the track. But it also is very accessible in a way for hip hop. It's definitely no Danny Brown. It's a very unique song in a way as well. It's just a brilliant track.
I give it a 10.
I give it a 10.
Next track is the... No, sorry, go ahead.
Start of a pattern. A pattern of 10s.
Next track is For Free, the interlude. It's got like a kind of gospel intro into a straight up like kind of old school jazz club kind of instrumental, and it sounds amazing, and Kendrick was fucking hilarious on this track. Like, the first time I heard it, I couldn't stop laughing, but it's so well done and just so funny. And I think that, the track's basically just, Kendrick talking his shit while at the same time making references to racism and all that sort of shit and slavery. And that kind of tied in with the whole concept of the album, again, very well. And I think it's an amazing track, but I didn't give it a score, though, because it's an interlude in quotation marks.
I think this track is a bit overlooked. I think it's very, very fucking good. It's very memorable. The skit especially is memorable. The jazz influence, fantastic. Especially the drumming is fantastic throughout. Piano's everything's fantastic about the instrumental. Kendrick Lamar gives a very witty and funny performance, but also very, very impressive lyrically, and definitely performance-wise as well. it's one of the most memorable tracks on the album for me, and it's definitely impressive, especially for a so-called interlude.
Like I said, I didn't score it.
I did. I gave it a 10.
Sick. Next track is King Kunta. The instrumental has got this really cool, like, funky bass in it. It sounds amazing. I love the way that this whole track sounds. And Kendrick absolutely killed it. You know, he's basically rapping about, you know, he's basically flexing, talking his shit, while making references to, you know, different musical icons throughout the years. Like, he references Michael Jackson, Jay-Z. Again, he's tying back themes of, like, slavery and stuff like that with references to, you know, Kunta Kinte, like, as the kind of track name suggests, you know, King Kunta. And overall, it's great. I think it is a fantastic track.
I agree. It's one of my favorite Kendrick Lamar songs. Definitely a top 5 for me. The flow of this track is very bouncy. Yeah, sorry.
I would say the same. It is the top 5 Kendrick song, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very bouncy, very infectious. Like, instrumentally incredible. Especially the bass work throughout, fantastic. And then Kendrick, as per usual, gives an awesome performance. Kendrick kills it on every single track on this album, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record by the end of this, but he's an incredible lyricist and an incredible performer as well. Female ad-libs are memorable as fuck, and, you know, sampling and production throughout is also brilliant. I think this is one of his best songs for sure.
Same. I gave it a 10.
I gave it a 10.
Institutionalized, featuring Bilal, Anna Wise, and Snoop Dogg. The instrumental sounds fantastic. It's old school. It's got boom bap edge into this kind of jazzy, kind of jazz rap instrumental that gives me kind of a Tribe Called Quest vibes. Like, this sounds like shit that fucking Q-Tip would have been rapping over, you know. Yeah. And it sounds amazing. And, you know, Kendrick, again, was on point. I think he's basically rapping about, you know, you can't really leave the hood. You can't take the hood out the homie, as Snoop Dogg said as well. And he did very well on the track, surprisingly. You know, making references to Eazy-E, and there's references to the rap industry as a whole and the government, you know, keeping, you know, the whole theme and cohesive structure of the album going.
Yeah, it's, for me, another incredible jazz instrumental. It's a lot more subtle and ominous at first before transitioning into a more upbeat, but just as calm, just as subtle and soft instrumental. There are a lot of layers to it, like the faint saxophone and flutes. It gave the track a bit of serenity, a bit of beauty. And Kendrick gives, once again, an incredible performance. Fantastic lyrics as always. I love how he sometimes pauses in time with the instrumental. He's got great awareness of the music around him, and the hook is one of the catchiest on the album as well. And yeah, Kendrick also knows when to kick the intensity into his flow, and he does so expertly near the end of the song.
10. These Walls, featuring Bilal, Anna Wise, and Thundercat. This track is funky as hell. Absolutely love the way this instrumental sounds. The bass sounds amazing. I love these kind of synthy melodies. They sound absolutely fantastic. And Anna Wise's contribution to the track was fantastic. So was Bilal's. And, you know, Kendrick killed it, obviously. Kendrick's been killing it throughout this whole album fantastically. And, you know, this whole track is just a metaphor for sex, if we're being real here. And it still sounds fantastic.
Yeah, right off the bat, incredible hook from Anna Wise. It's a very emotional and lush instrumental, and, you know, it's also at the same time quite deep and quite ominous when it comes to the bass aspects of it. But then, once again, it's contrasted by the very lush guitar strums, bells. It's just a very cool balance between the two. Bilal and Thundercat gave great contributions, and I love how the track almost breaks down into a kind of moody, synthy cacophony, and Kendrick just completely kills the ending. Brilliant track again.
It's a 10.
It's a 4. It's a 10.
Alright, the next track is You. The instrumental, it starts off with Kendrick screaming, then it just turns into a jazz instrumental, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. It is made well. The first half of this track is kind of aggressive from Kendrick, but then it switches into, like, you know, a man just breaking down and, like, drunk. All that sort of shit. He's just lost it. He's basically exploring the dark caverns of his psyche. And it's amazing. I think it is a very compelling track. It's one of the more lyrically potent tracks in the album, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah, instrumental is very dark, very ominous, very jazz inspired. Hook is iconic as hell, and Kendrick Lamar just gives one of the most memorable performances of his career. So intense, so passionate. The switch up halfway through the track is so clean that you don't even know the track switched until after it happened. In the second half of the song is equally passionate and emotional when it comes to Kendrick's performance. This is definitely an underrated track. I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about this one, but this is definitely one of his best tracks.
Same, I gave this track a 10.
I gave it a 10.
Next track, Alright. You know, it's alright.
Yeah.
Nah,
okay,
but...
next track.
No. Let me fucking speak. Alright is one of the first Kendrick tracks that I truly fell in love with when I heard it. Like, it wasn't the first Kendrick song I heard, but it was the one track that made me fall in love with Kendrick Lamar's music. Like, it's a jazz rap banger. The sampling is absolutely fantastic. Pharrell's involvement in the instrumental was absolutely amazing. I think it's fantastic. Kendrick was on point. I can't speak. Kendrick was on point. His flows are very solid. Lyrics about escaping his troubles with God and still making references to, you know, racism in America, tying the whole theme of the album. And overall, I think it's an amazing track. I think it's a bit of an overrated Kendrick song, but it's still fantastic.
I don't think it's overrated. I think it's amazing.
I've just heard it too many times at this point.
Maybe it's that. The instrumental is incredibly intricate. It's also very groovy, very fun to listen to, even to just your average music fan, not necessarily a connoisseur.
Like ourselves.
Yeah, like ourselves. We have degrees. Kendrick again.
We study music.
We study music at the Institute of Rate Your Music.
I went to Album of the Year.
And 4chan.
And the Needle Drop.
Yeah, he's our lecturer.
He was my professor.
No, this is cringe. Kendrick.
Yeah.
Kendrick, again, completely kills it. Anytime he switches his flow, it fits perfectly with the instrumental. Hook is brilliant, and it's one of his best songs, in my opinion.
I gave it a 10.
I give it a 10.
For Sale, Interlude. As it's an interlude, I did not score it. The jazzy instrumental is fantastic. The trumpet sounds great. It feels kind of psychedelic in a way, the way that I see it. Vocal effects on Kendrick and the others sound pretty good, and I can really appreciate the references to Good Kid, Mad City, referencing the character Shireen. He makes references to, you know, the devil, and that's a bit of a contrast to the last track where he's like, you know, hopeful and hoping to God and all that sort of stuff. And overall, I think it's a very, very solid and very well written track.
Yeah, it's very very lush, very peaceful. Once again, very jazzy. Instrumental. Kendrick gives a great performance, and it's one of the most quote unquote prettiest moments in the album. And yeah, it's a great little interlude. I
gave this track a not an applicable score because it's an interlude.
I gave it a 10.
Alright, Mama. It's got a like cool kind of lo-fi instrumental. There's cool drum sounds. I think the sampling is pretty sick. Again, Kendrick killed it. His flows and his lyrics are on point. He's basically talking about, you know, going back to the streets and all that sort of stuff. And I think it is amazing. I think it is a fantastic track. Again, you know, he has not missed. This man does not miss.
Yep. This is a very kind of subdued and calm instrumental, and Kendrick matches the mood of the track perfectly with very impressive performance, fantastic lyrics, a very smooth flow. There's a lot of lovely subtle details in the track. The choir vocals, very lush. It all comes together perfectly, especially in the mix. The upbeat ending is completely unexpected, but it's definitely a great way to close the track off, and it's just another hit in my eyes.
10.
10.
Next track is Hood Politics, and this is an absolute banger of a track. It has this kind of like hopeful feel to it in a way, and the production is absolutely fantastic. The sampling and the melodies in the instrumentals sound great. All props to Knowledge. He's a super underrated producer. Kendrick was fantastic again. You know, he's making references competent to Congress as reference to the cover. You know, he's talking about politics, taking all that sort of thing into consideration. And there's one lyric on the album that stood out to me the most. And it was the one where basically commented on how, like, oh, people appreciate lyrics more than anything. Then he basically goes, yeah, then why isn't Killer Mike platinum? And that kind of stuck to me as a Run the Jewels fan as well.
Yeah, once again, this is one of my favourite instrumentals on the whole album. It's very sinister and dark, but at the same time, it absolutely slaps. Kendrick again kills it. He never doesn't. And the hook is also very memorable. There's not a lot I can say about this song without sounding like a broken record. It's brilliant.
It is. I gave it a 10.
I gave it a 10.
How Much a Dollar Cost featuring James Fauntleroy and Ronald Isley. Again, the jazz instrumental sounds fantastic. The pianos are solid, and the crashes are pretty sick as well. They sound pretty cool. You know, Kendrick is basically rapping about money and an encounter that he had with a homeless man, and how that encounter kind of questions his morals and his kind of selfishness, you could say. It's kind of in reference to like an old story as well. Like, there's so much going into these lyrics. There's so much to read into. And it's absolutely fantastic. Another brilliant track.
It's another one of my favourite instrumentals. The hook is very uneasy and kind of adds to the quite dark atmosphere of the track. I don't know what else I can say without sounding like a broken record. Very lyrically sound. It's an amazing performance from Kendrick. Very well produced. Great instrumental. Everything's just brilliant. I think I'm definitely just going to repeat myself a lot, so I'm going to keep it short for the last few tracks.
Okay, I gave this track a 10.
I gave it a 10.
Complexion featuring Rhapsody. This is a super underrated Kendrick track in my opinion. It has a really cool lo-fi jazz instrumental. It sounds amazing. And you know, the track is basically about, you know, acceptance of all races and all that sort of stuff. And Rhapsody had the same verse, but Rhapsody laid down a fantastic verse. Rhapsody is super underrated in general. You know, Kendrick and Rhapsody had good, decent chemistry. They basically had really good, solid verses about the same topic, and I think it's a super underrated Kendrick track.
Yeah, it's got a very brazy, layered instrumental, and it sounds brilliant. Kendrick gives a very sentimental, what the fuck am I?
Sentimental.
Sentimental and emotional performance, and the feature from Rhapsody fits in perfectly. I love the backing vocal samples during her verse, and it's just another hit.
I gave it a 10.
I give it a 10.
The Blacker the Berry.
Sweeter
oh boy.
the juice.
The big one. This thing is the most aggressive Kendrick Lamar track, I would say at least. Like, it's up there, it's with the aggressive tone of like fucking Backseat Freestyle. But I think that this one is amazing. The boom bap instrumental is hard as fuck. It sounds amazing. Kendrick had a very aggressive verse on here. Basically venting out his anger at, you know, racism, manipulation, hatred, all that sort of stuff. And you could feel it in the instrumental and in Kendrick's performance. It is complemented very well. And overall, it's another amazing and iconic Kendrick track.
Yep, it's just one of those songs that you don't hear every day, that don't come out every day. It's very immense, very intense, very dark, It's very poignant as well, and it's a very important track. It's really dark, crimey, and atmospheric. Especially Kendrick's performance is just really, really intense, and he delivered some really heavy verses. And I'm not really in a position to paraphrase any of what he's saying, but it's a lot of stuff that really has to be said, and Kendrick says it in quite a way. Yeah, it's one of his best songs for sure.
All right, I gave it a 0.
I give it a 1.
Yeah, agreed. Nah. This bitch a 10. This bitch a 10. You ain't gotta lie, Mama said. I'm getting fucking Happy Gilmore vibes off that. No, not fucking Waterboy. Mama said.
Stop.
Okay. I need to stop. This is getting cringe. It's getting pretty cringe. It's got a cool, like, jazzy instrumental again. There's cool bass at times, and it is pretty sick. And, you know, Kendrick is Kendrick.
I agree.
That's all that needs to be said.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The track kind of gives me some somewhat kind of G-funk vibes, and it's definitely an interesting track instrumentally in that aspect. And Kendrick again. Okay, I'm just copy and paste what I said before. Just brilliant track.
All right, 10. Now, this one is the live version of the original single that was released, and I think that the live version is miles better than the studio version. It just feels more raw. It just feels more... What's the word? It doesn't matter anyway. Better. Okay. We graduated our fucking class in music college.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah. It's great. It's up tempo. The guitars are fantastic. I love the rawness of it. Kendrick is, basically talking about self-expression, self-love, no victimization, and it's an absolutely amazing track. I think it is a top tier Kendrick song.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a very vibrant and memorable instrumental, and a fantastic performance from Kendrick. And yeah, it's fantastic. It's very complex. The sliding guitar and the groovy bass line, all of it is just incredible, and this is another masterpiece in my opinion.
10. The final track, Mortal Man. Now, this track is 15 minutes long, and it basically ties the concept of the whole album together. The first half, is just a normal jazz rap track. It is fantastic. Kendrick pulled off his verses well, although there was a questionable Michael Jackson line, let's just say that. Then it transitions into him basically reciting this poem that, he's been saying that is scattered throughout the album, and, entailing, the whole concept. And he's reciting this poem to someone in particular, and he's reciting it to Tupac, of all people. And Tupac was Kendrick's favorite rapper. And it was done in a way where, he used recordings of Tupac in an interview and tied it together in a way where Kendrick was talking to Tupac, and it sounded great. It's an amazing way to finish the album, and it's a really unique way to finish the album, I would say.
I really cannot say anything you haven't said. Yeah, that's a great synopsis.
Alright.
10.
This bitch a 10. Overall thoughts and opinions on To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. I think To Pimp a Butterfly was my album of the decade, last decade, and it's the best rap album of the last decade. It's one of the best rap albums of all time, in my opinion. Kendrick utilized jazz in such an amazing way. His ear for jazz production sounds fantastic. All credit to, the producers and Kendrick himself. The concept of the album is fantastic. It is tied together very well. I think it's Kendrick's best written album. And it's not like something you'd listen to in a casual setting. Like Good Kid, Mad City would probably be something you'd listen to in a casual setting, but this one feels more grand and more structured and cohesive. But they're both equally great albums. I think that this is peak Kendrick. This was where Kendrick mastered his craft, and I think that he proved himself as one of the best rappers of all time with this album. And overall, Kendrick is probably he's in the conversation for the greatest of all time, I would say.
For sure. For this album, Kendrick had quite an ambitious vision. And looking back at it, I don't think there was a way to, fulfill that vision in a better way. He brought together a cast of talented musicians, producers, rappers, singers, even visual artists, and they all formed a complete and mesmerizing unit of just amazing instrumental, amazing performances from Kendrick, track after track after track, and it's a bit overwhelming in how amazingly and effortlessly it comes together, and how well it blends genres, ideas, emotions together. And every single second of this album is just very important, very powerful, very thought-provoking. And it's hard to really paraphrase any of, what is said on this album, but it's a very important album, and I think it's one that's going to be remembered for decades and decades to come. And it is one of the best albums ever made.
I agree. Overall, it's a 10. It's a perfect album, in my opinion.
It's a 10.
Is this bitch a 10?
For sure. And on that note, do you want to hear what albums we'll be talking about next week?
Not really, but okay.
Here.
I'm only joking.
Okay, album 1 is Laura Marling, Song for Our Daughter.
Alright.
Album 2 is Rina Sawayama.
Alright.
The big one, the big one for sure, is Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters.
I'm excited for that one. I've heard great things.
Dude, the hype is intense. Every single fucking publication is giving it a 10. Fuck me.
I can't wait to listen to it then.
The classic is The Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
That would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That will be the first Beatles album I'll listen to. Just saying.
Really? Quite.
I have never listened to a Beatles album. I'm being real here. I'm excited for this.
Worst to best idea.
Worst to best idea?
It's definitely divisive.
I'm just going to nab that for my channel as well.
It's definitely a divisive album when it comes to Beatles. Most people adore it, but some people despise it.
I know most people prefer Abbey Road or Sgt. Pepper's.
I think this... I think they're both amazing. But we'll talk about it next week.
We'll save that for...
we'll save that good shit.
We'll save that for next week. Thank you guys so much for checking out today's episode of the Taped Podcast. Whose opinions did you agree more with on whatever album? What was your favourite album that we talked about? Necessary links are in the description to our Rate Your Music Album of the Year and our own YouTube channels. And yeah, see ya.
Bye.